Hello. There is a realm the unloved call home. It's Newcastle. While they are there, they watch those films whose reputations, or lack of them, precede them. This is Cinema Limbo, a place for films worthy of re-evaluation. Tonight's film is the 2001 comedy Freddy Got Fingered, starring, co-written and directed by Tom Green. Joining me for this seminar is my good friend Chris Arnsby, who once described parallel universe-based TV series Sliders as, every week it's like, what if hats wore people? And this episode was recorded in his little house on the longest road in South London. I was introduced to this film by my older sister, who had seen it somewhere, and she told me about it, and she thought that it would be the sort of thing that I would enjoy. I'd heard about it because it had this phenomenal reputation of being one of the worst films ever made, of being in incredibly bad taste. So I was quite sceptical, because my sister and I have very different tastes in movies. She's always making jokes about how I'm always the exact opposite of the prevailing trend. But it turned up on TV, and I watched it, and I thought, wow, this is something completely different. It's very original in its way, and it goes to places where most comedies don't have the guts to go, particularly bad taste comedies, which always just end up making jokes about black people and gay people. And this is making jokes about horse penises and cheese, yes, and disabled people liking kinky sex. I showed it to my other sister, and we got about 10 minutes in before she turned to me and said, "What's wrong with him?"
Which was kind of my reaction as well, because not knowing really what else to do, I went into this not really knowing anything about the film. I have got this kind of distant, half-remembered memory of it being talked about quite a lot in whenever it came out, late 90s?
2001.
2001, okay, slightly later than I thought. And I seem to remember it was a relatively big deal at the time. But I knew nothing about it. There's a clip on YouTube from Family Guy, which is a cutaway to Tom Green dressed in a ballet dancer's tutu and sucking on a goat's teat, and then he turns to the camera and goes, "Does everybody like me now?" And that's kind of the some knowledge that I have of Tom Green. I just went to this not knowing anything about it, and I kind of deliberately didn't do any research, and I still haven't read anything about it, because I have my own theories and opinions about the film, and I almost don't want them to be contradicted by anything else. It's something that you said, you used the phrase something completely different, and something that did strike me about it, and this is going to sound a bit pseudo-intellectual, so apologies in advance, it's getting into the same sort of territory as Monty Python's Flying Circus, in that within the structure of the film it's quite subversive. But I don't know if that's deliberate or accidental.
I think a lot of it is just being done to provoke, because Tom Green started out having this public access TV show in Canada, which was like an extreme Beatles about. And his preferred victims of his pranks were his own parents.
Right, okay.
And you can see where some of the humour in the film comes from, where he's victimising his own parents so much. And that was sufficiently successful so that it was made a national TV show. And I think a version was made for MTV in America. And it steamrolled as a huge success, and eventually he was just handed the keys by Paramount to say, "We'd like you to make a movie, write, direct yourself," although it's co-written with a friend of his, and star in it. And it's a lot of trust to give someone who's never made a movie before $11 million, even though that isn't a huge amount, to say, whatever it is you're doing is popular. We don't understand it, but people like it, and we want you to do a movie of it. And as a result, he makes this.
Well, and that was when it got towards the end. There was a whole point when I began to wonder if it was art imitating life, because there's the whole sequence at the end where I've got $1 million, and he starts spending it on all kinds of stuff, and you get into the sequence with the helicopter where he's flying in, and it is tempting to wonder whether it's just them deliberately blowing through the budget on the most ridiculous things that they can think of. There are elements of the whole business with zebras in America where they give him a check and he just goes off and immediately starts spending it. And you think, okay, is this echoing what happened with the film? I didn't hate it, but there was definitely a point about halfway through where I would quite happily have seen Tom Green's character die, and I don't know whether that's intentional or not. I just was utterly out of sympathy with him. About halfway through the film, I was rooting for the dad, but you get to the end, and it kind of puts everything in a little bit more perspective. And the problem I keep having with this film is I don't know how much credit to give the writer and the creative team behind it. There's a lot of stuff that I could speculate about, but I'm genuinely just not sure whether I'm projecting my own theories onto it. It kind of seems to be ridiculing the structure of teen movies, so that there's the whole business of the mean dad, where Rip Torn, who's brilliant, of course. The
thing is, knowing what we know now about him, that he broke into a bank because he thought it was his own house.
Oh yes, yeah.
One is wondering, which got him fired from Men in Black 3. One wonders how much of this is maybe they chose him because they knew that he is actually a nut.
I mean, this would have been after he'd been in the Larry Sanders Show as well, wouldn't it? Because that was early 90s, I think.
Well, this was, as I say, it was about 2001, 2002,
so
it would have been
after
long after it started, yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic cast. I mean, you've got Rip Torn as the dad. The mum really bugged me for ages. I was watching the film going, where have I seen you before?
It's Julie Haggerty from Airplane.
Yes, that's exactly it. And I kind of recognised she's got this very sort of nervous, fragile performance, and I couldn't work out where it was. But yes, it was Aeroplane.
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 A popular film, Aircraft.
Yes, yeah. Okay. You go through the film, and there's the whole business with the mean dad. And I'm left wondering whether that's deliberately meant to parody other teen films where there is the kid that's got the dream and the dad doesn't understand him, and the kid's just working to get his daddy's approval, and and that's what seems to be going on through this film. But at the same time, what's actually going on is nonsense. It's a bit like with something like The Day Today, where Armando Iannucci and Chris Morris worked out that you could take the format of the news, but if you poured nonsense in at the start, then what you got was a very serious news report about the Home Secretary going down into the London Underground to kill rogue horses with a special hammer.
It was a special gun.
Was it a special gun?
I like the idea of a special hammer.
Yeah, and this is the same thing. This is the structure of a film where somebody is working to gain the approval of their dad, but the actual content of it is just ridiculous. You get the moment when Tom Green's character accuses his dad of fingering Freddy,
which is probably my favourite scene in the movie because it comes out of nowhere. It's based on nothing. It's more just that he's just trolling his own family for no reason other than his own amusement, and also he's just because his dad is so controlling himself, and he's just fighting back by just throwing out this complete gibberish. And then he just put both feet on the accelerator and plays the rest of the scene at the highest pitch, throwing the statue through the window, leaping out of it and running away in slow motion, and screaming, "He's a child molester!" The
tone of the film is all over the place. There were times when people react naturally to Tom Green's antics. There's times when it's deliberately cartoonish, and it's all over the place. And I am left with the feeling that it's like the structure of a proper Hollywood film, but with nonsense fed in. And so you get this very, very weird subversive, which goes back to what I was saying about Monty Python's Flying Circus, where apparently I think it was John Cleese or somebody said that he heard comments from people. They said that once they'd watched Monty Python's Flying Circus, they weren't able to watch the news because suddenly it made what was going on in the world seem ridiculous. And that's kind of the same thing here, in that it takes this very sensible format, puts nonsense in, gets nonsense out. You look at something like not the Green Lantern. Yes, it is the Green Lantern, isn't it? Where everybody has daddy issues in that film.
Oh God, that's a terrible film.
Oh yeah. I think does even the alien gas or whatever the hell it is at the end of the film, I think that has daddy.
That's the space gas.
Yes, yeah. I think everybody has daddy issues in that film. And that's what this seems to be parodying with the relationship between... But I come back to this thing that I don't know how...
But it does have that connection to Green's own life. That he did have this incredibly bizarre, combative relationship with his own parents, and probably still does.
Yeah.
There's a segment in his TV show where he had the bonnet of their car spray painted with a pornographic image, which I won't describe for the good mental health of our listener.
Okay, nice. I'm sure Google Images will turn something up.
Oh, I looked, it's there.
Right. as a film, it genuinely wrong-footed me. I mean, I went into it not knowing anything about it. I didn't even know if it was a fictional film. I did. Well, I didn't, or whether it was just like Jackass or something. It was.
Oh, right, just like a sequence
of outrageous stunts. So I kind of went into it, and it starts, and it's got this very traditional teen movie opening. He gets up, he gets on the skateboard, he skateboards through the shopping mall, and it's exactly the kind of thing that you would expect to see in a teen movie. The relationship with the dad is exactly the same thing you'd expect to see in a teen movie. Even the soundtrack is exactly the same thing you'd expect to see in a teen movie. And the film kind of had me questioning my own interpretation at the end of it, because when it starts playing, is it Slim Shady at the end?
Yeah, the end credits, yeah.
I'm not sure whether it's just playing that, because that's the kind of song you would expect to hear at the end of a teen film. And this is where I genuinely don't know if Tom Green has come up with something actually subversive, or the whole thing is just an accident. I don't trust him enough to have come up with something. At times this seems to be very, very clever, and I'm not sure I trust him enough to have come up with something this clever. I could believe it was an accident.
As I believe David St. Hubbins said, there's a very fine line between clever and stupid.
Yeah.
And this zigzags all over the line.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I think you're right about the beginning being like the opening of a teen movie, and it plays like that. All the way through that opening bit, he's going to get on the bus. Dad says, "Oh, you're not getting on that bus because I'm giving you a car." And says, "Oh, I'm going to make you proud. And he's just about to pull away, and someone walks in front of the car and says, "Get the fuck out of the way!" Which was ad-libbed, because that extra was just wandering out without even being directed.
Okay, I didn't know that.
But it just suddenly, oh, this is going in a different direction to where it looked like.
There were two things. I mean, that was the first genuine laugh of the film for me. Actually,
exactly.
It came out of nowhere. It's a really good joke, and it's the repetition of the word proud. But there again, you've got these very strange non-naturalistic performances where they're cutting between two people who are basically just repeating the word proud at each other.
If we go by the idea that it's deliberately subversive, it's just cutting down that kind of scene to just one word each.
Exactly,
and just turning it from something that's very familiar and structured into gibberish.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and so you put nonsense out, you put nonsense in and you get nonsense out, yeah.
And then it cuts to him driving down the motorway and staring at a horse's erection.
Yes. An erect ejaculating horse's penis, I believe. Or did I just imagine? I was watching it in high definition.
I was. Unfortunately, I could only watch it on DVD. Well, we're already talking about a horse's erection. I believe that was natural lubrication.
Okay,
because it seemed to be coming out of the side rather than the end. Mum, you're not allowed to listen to any more of this.
That goes for you as well, Mum. And when did you get an MP3 player anyway? And so the tone is all over the place. You get that bit that's obviously meant to be shocking, but the film kind of backs itself into a corner at that point, because at that point my reaction was, "Go ahead, outrage me. Is that the best you've got?" And it kind of undercuts. So you get the sequence later with the deer where he's skinning it, which I assume is a real deer, but I'm kind of sitting there going, I'm not going to be. I refuse to be impressed by this.
Well, there's the punchline to that is where he's hit by the truck, and going back to the cartoonish thing, that would have turned him into salsa. But instead, he flies on the road. He's actually hit by it's a dummy that's hit. The dummy's foot flies off.
Oh, right, I missed that.
And he slides about 100 yards down the road, and then he just gets up and he's fine.
Yeah, and and so the tone is all over the place. 1 minute it's a relatively naturalistic comedy. 1 minute it's weird cartoon stuff. There's a bit. You have the whole sequence where he goes and talks to the head of the animation studio, who says, "You must get inside the characters." And then a minute later, and I know it's a minute later because I was sad enough to go back and time this, he's driving down the road, he sees the dead deer, car stops, and Tom Green mutters to himself, "Get inside the character." Yeah, he does. And then you see this little sort of thinks bubble or something comes up with the same guy, and it's as if the filmmakers don't trust the audience enough to remember something that was only being talked about a minute ago. And there were moments when the film is trying to be as outrageous as possible, but then there were other moments when the film doesn't seem to trust the audience. And I can't get a grip on it.
Or it may just be reinforcing that cliche.
Possibly.
That it has literally just been 30 seconds since that's been said. But normally that would be sort of a callback over a longer period of time. So they're just going to put the callback in anyway, less than a minute later.
True.
And since we're talking about teen movies, I do like the gag that Dave Davison, head of the animation studio, is played by Anthony Michael Hall, star of The Breakfast Club.
Oh, right.
And all these 80s teen movies, and is now, looks completely different. Looks like he's a terrifying guy. I mean, he looks really menacing in this. And it's an outrage, incidentally, that he isn't the lead in the remake of Vacation.
Oh, right.
Instead, it's Ed Helms, the comedy Black Hole. Because Anthony Michael Hall should have lead roles. He's actually a really great actor.
Yeah, well, the good people at Red Letter Media described Ed Helms even more cruelly than
I know they did, and I pulled back from that because I thought that's maybe a bit unfair to people who suffer from that particular disease.
Yeah, I'm just worried that for any apologies to...
If you haven't seen the film yet, it's too late.
Yeah.
You should either watch the film before listening to this, or don't worry about spoilers.
Yeah, definitely don't worry about spoilers, because I'm going to trample all over this film. But it's more just the fact that I'm aware that, and it's the nature of the film, actually. One thing makes you think of one bit, and you go, well, what about that? Because in the closing credits at the end, they have outtakes. And I think there's an outtake of Tom Green during the deer sequence where he sort of stands up dressed in the blooded skin and says something like, "What the fuck am I doing?" And I thought that was a mistake to put that bit in, because that is like peeking behind the curtain. Suddenly it's not Tom... I nearly called him Tom Cruise. Suddenly it's not...
Tom Cruise covered in blood?
Yeah.
That would never happen.
Suddenly it's not Tom Green, wacky character. It's Tom Green, cynical accountant, going, this is the kind of thing that my jaded viewing public wants to see. And so it's, as I say, I find it very, very hard to get a grip on this film, because it's all over the place, and I suspect deliberately so.
I agree. I mean, that little actor, I assume that's just him at the end of the tape realising, this is a ridiculous way to earn a living. I should be doing stand-up, not covering myself in entrails for a laugh. So talking earlier about the reception the film had when it came out, I found some critical quotes. Leonard Maltin, the highly regarded US critic, said that it was everything wrong with movie comedy. Roger Ebert was very scathing about it and said that it didn't even deserve to be mentioned in the same phrase as bottom of the barrel.
Oh, well, yeah. Roger Ebert said a lot of things about films, didn't he? And he had quite a few films that he didn't seem to like.
I've looked through some of his reviews, and he has some... He always cared, and he was very important in communicating a love of film to the general public. And it's hard to argue that. In the same way that Martin Scorsese has done a lot of very, very important work in preserving film history. But that doesn't mean that all his films are great, because I think that he's actually overrated as a filmmaker. CNN said that this was the worst film ever released by a major Hollywood studio. Oh no,
I'm sure if you gave me a few minutes I could think of some... With the Green Lantern. Mind you, the Green Lantern came out afterwards, but maybe...
Moulin Rouge, I think, came out the same year, and I think Moulin Rouge is unwatchable.
I
watched the first 20 minutes and had to go for a walk because my brain hurt. The Toronto Star gave it -1 out of 5.
But the trouble is that sometimes highly negative reviews on a film like this is almost self-defeating, because you always get this film is almost kind of critic-proof in that you can just point to it. You can point to the reaction and go, "Well, that's the reaction I wanted to get," or that people would just go that it's so bad it's good, or all those kinds of phrases. But I can imagine it didn't go down particularly well.
Well, the New York Times compared it to conceptual art.
Okay.
And said it was interesting rather than entertaining.
Yeah.
And Chris Rock has actually said it's one of his favourite films.
I can see where the New York Times is coming from because, as I say,
I was going to say I think you can see why the New York Times would say that, because it's the New York Times.
Well, yes, obviously. Pinko subversives.
I've read the New York Times, and they're like New Labour.
Oh,
they say they're left wing.
Okay. Yeah, I can see it's a film that I can look at it and I can look at it and I can be all sort of beard stroking and go, yes, I can see that there's something terribly interesting going on here. I come back to what I think I said early on. I didn't hate it.
I've been through the film. I've made quite a few notes. I actually said that's the first laugh of the film about him screaming at the guys he's driving off. I did like when Freddy's with the rest of the family to see Gord off. The main character's name, by the way, is Gord Brady. We haven't mentioned that so far. And he says, how come he gets a car and I don't? And Gord replies, it's because they love me more than they love you.
Yes.
It just says that very flat, matter-of-fact way. And the gag is that his dad pretty much hates Gord.
Yes.
And his mum barely tolerates him because he's her son. And because that's the obligation.
And you get to the end of the film, and it is that thing that, again, makes me think that this is parodying a typical teen movie, in that the moment Tom Green's character becomes successful, his dad loves her, and they have a great relationship. And then you get to the whole sequence in
Pakistan,
where they've bonded and their relationship has healed, and they share an emotional father-son moment while covered in elephant jizz.
Which is, because even though he hasn't sort of followed the traditional path, he's actually found something he's good at and made a go of it and become a success.
Yeah, which is what his dad wants.
Exactly, and his dad wants him to be sort of more commercial, but he's made a success of it, he's made a go of it, and that's what's paid off. And I think that's the part for me that feels the most autobiographical, that becoming a TV star and then making a movie, in a way he wants approval of his own parents. I can imagine most people do want approval from their parents in whatever it is that they're doing. And he's kind of calling for it in this by saying, we've got a very combative relationship, but, I've done something. I made a movie.
And that's it. And I forget who it was. I was listening or reading to something recently where somebody... The final summing up was that regardless of what they thought of this particular film, and all I remember was that they hated it, they said that at the end you had to admire the fact that they had actually made a movie, because it's not something most people get to do, and that in itself, I guess, is an achievement. And to have made this particular movie, as I say, well done you.
Well, that actually ties into something else that I've said. Jim, Gord's dad, is accused of having fingered Freddy. And the social services turn up at the family home. And there's actually a little in-joke there, because Freddy is watching some kind of medical program on TV. He's actually watching a special Tom Green made about his own surgery for testicular cancer.
Oh, is that... Because I saw at the end there was a credit for MTV, and I couldn't quite work out where that had come from. Yeah. I mean, there's the bit in the children's home at the end where the kids are obviously watching something massively unsuitable on TV as well.
Which is, that's the thing, it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I've said before is a film that is absolutely terrible, but I respect the fact that they actually managed to get it made, because they're really working hard in awful conditions, and they made something that's almost unwatchably poor. but they did actually finish it.
But they made it, yeah. And again, an example of how this film completely wrong-footed me from the beginning. I assumed that Tom Green's character was going to be called Freddy, and at some point he would be fingered in an amusing fashion. And it's not. Freddy is the brother. But the whole storyline with the social services coming to take him away and take him to a place of safety is done completely non-naturalistically. Everyone reacts as if he's a kid, and he isn't. But the storyline proceeds exactly... I'm struggling now to come up with the right words to describe it, but it is that thing that everyone just acts as they would do.
It's absurdist, and it does tie in with it being like Monty Python, where in it with this grown man in a children's home.
That rings a bell with the Monty Python sketch. But that's the classic example where there will be something absurd will happen, but people will continue to react to it as if it was the most normal thing. Oh, absurdist is exactly the right word that I couldn't find just now.
It's very Louis Buñuel, I think.
Yes.
Very Spanish surrealist.
Yes, quite. If I knew... I mean, I've seen that Salvador Dali film with the ants and the lady and Hawaii, and it's probably thematically similar.
Yeah, one could draw that comparison. That it's very much like Tom Green pulling a... Actually, yeah, because that's got dead animals in it as well.
It has, actually.
Because it's got the dead donkey on top of a piano being moved across the road. It's almost exactly like a scene from this film.
I just watched the bit with the ants and the eye, and that was me done, really.
It's like 20 minutes after that. It's great.
Okay. It didn't hold my attention.
Another bit I've written down is the whole sequence where he arrives at the animation studio to talk to whoever it is who is in charge. He doesn't even know their name. Just runs in the assembly, and it just says boss.
Yeah.
And he winds up lying outrageously, claiming that the man's wife is dead, and he's got to tell him because he's from the police and that he's actually Quincy.
Yes, yeah.
And the next time we see him, he's running into a restaurant dressed as a British Bobby.
Yeah.
Complete with helmet, which I guess I'd completely forgotten that bit. And I had to stop at the disc because I was laughing so much at this ridiculous of a suit. And he's wearing the outfit that's clearly too big for him as well, which is just that extra cherry on top of the joke.
I've been a bit snobby about the shot... Listen to me talking about shot composition, Mum. I was a bit snobby about some of the shot composition earlier because you get things like when he pulls up outside the animation studio for the first time, there's a cutaway shot to the animation studio sign, and then it cuts back to him in the car and he sort of nods thoughtfully. And you just look at it and think, yeah, you couldn't get the car to stop in the right place to get the shot you wanted. So I was a bit snobby about some of the direction. But then there's a very nicely simple little bit in the restaurant where he's running around shouting, and again, because I've made no notes on this film, I can't remember the names of any of the characters. What's the name of the head of the animation studio?
Dave Davison.
Dave Davison. You'd think I'd be able to remember that.
I know, because he makes it out of thin air and it happens to be correct.
Oh, right.
Which is, and again, it's the absurdist part. It's that the world is slowly starting to bend to his will.
Yeah, see, I didn't even pick up on that bit. But yeah, anyway, so he's running around shouting Dave Davison. I'm looking, and he's going, "Are you Dave Davison? Are you Dave Davison?"
And he says it to a woman as well.
But he says it, and then the camera shifts slightly to the left, and that's when she comes on screen, and that's quite a nice little sort of pull back and reveal joke in a way.
There's something that I do notice in some films that I've been covering for this podcast, is that if you have a director who's very inexperienced, if you have an experienced and capable crew, then that will cover any problems and any sort of lack of ability that they might have simply just not having made it before.
Yeah.
Because, for example, with The Wicker Man, you have a director who's not made a film before, but a very experienced crew. And the result is that it's a very well-directed film because you have someone who has the ideas and a crew who knows how to make that work.
Yeah.
And then you watch The Wicker Tree and you have a director who still hasn't had that much experience 40 years later and a crew that doesn't really know what they're doing. And as a result, you have a film that's a complete car crash.
Oh, dear. Apparently Orson Welles was terrible for that. He'd take money to appear in somebody's film and then he'd walk on set and look at it and go, "Oh, you're going to put the camera there, are you?" And it would kind of set the tone for the rest of the day, rather.
Well, Orson Welles would just take the money and then do whatever he wanted.
And then do some more Frozen Pea commercials. Yeah, that sounded
Paul
weird.
Masson! Listener, if you haven't heard the outtakes from Orson Welles commercials for Paul Masson wines, you really need to listen to them because they're hilarious. Because you get... is that one where he gets more and more drunk all the way through?
I'm not sure. I think
it's something else.
I think I've heard the one for the Bird's Eye Frozen Peas commercial where he's actually arguing with the people that wrote the advert about which words should go in which order, but I haven't heard the other one.
It's not audio outtakes, it's actually video outtakes, but I think that he's just drinking glass after glass after glass of it and is getting more and more drunk. And it's obvious, I mean, it's terrible to begin with. I'm wildly going off tangent here, but I mean, it's just this very cheesy, crappy commercial. But it just gets more and more off the rails as it goes on. I mean, it's almost like the outtakes of Tom Baker doing the commercials for Symphony. I've forgotten even what Symphony is. Were they furniture showroom?
I couldn't... that one's passed me by.
Oh, you've never heard this?
No.
It was commercials. I think it's a furniture showroom called Symphony, which no longer exists. But Tom is clearly getting more and more pissed off by this rubbish that he's supposed to say, and he winds up coming up with the catchphrase, or the tagline rather, Symphony. Even for monkey shaggers.
Actually, while we're on the subject of terrible voiceovers and adverts, there's a Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis advert for a film called The Caddy, I think it is, where they do the voiceover for that and they start bickering and criticising the film. And again, so yeah, but in summary, lots of actors said lots of terrible things in voiceover. And luckily these days most of them are on YouTube, so go and listen to them.
Yeah, they are really worth your time. But watching Freddy Got Fingered, something that I didn't know is that it's in places it's like reminds me of an Adam Sandler film, but in reverse, because in those you are in the position of the Adam Sandler character where he is the normal one and everyone else is weird, even though clearly he's a horrible parody of humanity. And in this, you're on the outside looking in, and so everyone else is fairly normal, but he's the one who's weird, but he's the protagonist in the movie.
The one bit we haven't talked about yet is the sausages. So,
oh, yes.
But, you know, that's one particular bit where his dad comes in and specifically talks about what's going on and is outraged by Tom Green's antics. And so that again is just one of the things that adds to the peculiarness of the film, is that at times people seem to be able to see what Tom Green's doing and react to it as anybody would. And I'm not sure, were bits of this basically shot as hidden camera, or was it all done properly as a film?
As far as I know, it was all shot properly, scripted.
Okay.
Which bits were you thinking were hidden
There's
camera?
the bit in the bank where maybe it was just the direction of the extras, but when he comes into the bank at the end because he's got the cheque for $1 million, there's just something about the way that the extras start kind of looking around, and it's just not quite clear whether they're in on the joke or not. But
it could be the way that the whole thing was directed, where the extras hadn't been briefed on what was going to happen.
Yeah, that would make sense. And they're not quite sure what to do, or whether they're even being paid to react, or whether
exactly, and they certainly wouldn't have if they're certainly not allowed to speak on camera, as far as I know, depending on union rules.
There's another. I mean, the second good laugh of the film for me, and I'm kind of embarrassed that this got a laugh out of me, is the bit at the cheese factory when he's on the conveyor belt and he takes an enormous German smoked cheese and jams it between his legs, and I think starts shouting about how sexy he is. And
I'm a sexy boy!
That's it. And then it cuts and he's moving sideways along the conveyor belt with this German sausage between his legs, and it whacks up against the side of this poor woman's head and then very, very slowly scrapes all the way over the top of her head. And all credit to the lady concerned. She does. I don't know whether she's been directed to just not react at all. But what makes it incredibly funny is the polite non-reaction, as if there's just nothing going on.
Exactly. It's like if I'll ignore him, he'll just go away.
He'll go away,
and he will, because he's on the conveyor belt. And the fact that he's shouting "ding dong, ding dong" as he's going on for no reason, just because it's funny.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much the tagline of the whole movie. There's no reason for this other than it's funny.
Yes. And then you get other bits. I think it's what you were saying about it feeling like an Adam Sandler film in places. The point where I was getting particularly fed up with the Tom Green character, and it cuts to a restaurant, and again you just think, I thought, yeah, oh no. There's something about the establishing shot. It's like the world's most cliched. Well, look at this swanky joint. I sure hope Tom Green's wacky character puts these squares noses out of joint. And it's actually, and again, maybe it's deliberate, but it's like the most predictable setup to somebody's outrageous antics causing people to become upset. And that, again, is a bit like an Adam Sandler film where
it's snobs versus slobs every single time.
And you're meant to sympathise with the slobs,
even though the slobs are actually horrible as well. I mean, in the case of Freddy Got Fingered, I think there is a difference in that Gord doesn't really have a problem with wealthy, well-to-do people in and of themselves. And he goes to a fancy restaurant because it's a fancy restaurant, because he wants to impress his new girlfriend, and because he's lied about being an investment banker.
Which, again, go back to the thing about the structure of a typical teen movie is exactly the kind of scene that you would expect to see in that sort of thing.
He's lied about being more important than he is, and he's going to get found out. Because his parents are at the same restaurant, his dad confronts him, and then they just both spontaneously freak out.
Yes.
And Gord starts smashing up the string quartet and spraying everyone with club soda.
And I think, again, that was the point where it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear, honestly. But I wasn't sure whether this was being filmed hidden camera or whether it was just set up on as a soundstage or something. Because again, something about the reaction of the extras, I just couldn't quite work it out. But I suspect, by the sounds of it, it was all just done. Not meant to be done hidden camera, and maybe the extras were just told.
But various people are being sprayed as he's waving around the nozzles from behind the bar, and I don't think there's much reaction.
No. And
I think they've been deliberately said, whatever happens, don't react, just carry on with what you would be doing, just eating your meal and talking to whoever else is at your table. And I think that makes it funnier, because it's going back to the absurdity again of refusing to respond to this weird situation as though it's weird, just sort of incorporating that into your world. And
well, you're back to some of the bits like the sort of Leslie Nielsen in Airplane or something, where things would happen and Leslie Nielsen would just have a completely deadpan reaction to it. And so I suppose,
it's a movie of Leslie Nielsen's. Everyone is a Leslie Nielsen in this movie, except Tom Green and Rip Torn.
Yes, possibly. See, the other thing that's strange about the film is that only Tom Green is allowed to be wacky and outrageous or Rip Torn. But when the girlfriend starts coming on to him, his character then suddenly becomes very sort of shy and embarrassed. And it is almost this thing, it's as if Tom Green's character is the only one that's allowed to do anything crazy. And the moment another character starts doing something crazy, it's suddenly meant to be shocking, but not shocking in a way that is, look at these outrageous stunts. I'm completely failing to articulate something which...
He goes over to her flat, and if you haven't seen the movie, the point is that he's met this girl in the hospital, and she's a nurse there, and it's only after they've sort of made arrangements for a date, he realises she's in a wheelchair. So he goes over to her flat, and they have a nice little time, and she persuades him to beat her paralysed legs with a bamboo cane.
Yes.
And he gets a bit carried away and accidentally hits her in the face.
Yeah, which again is actually quite a good joke. But that's a bit where the film suddenly... And this is what I was saying about it. It's as if it's only Tom Green's character that's allowed to be outrageous. Given that by this point in this film we've had ejaculating horse cocks, or possibly not, I mean, it could be lubricant. That's an argument for another day.
It was definitely moist.
Yes. So you've had that, you've had deer being gutted.
The birth scene.
Oh yes, the birth scene.
With the baby literally flying out of the woman.
Which again is just such a ludicrously cartoony scene that...
Oh, and his best friend... his best friend...
Oh yes,
his best friend spent years building this little half pipe in Gould's family's driveway. And they finally finish it late at night. And Gould has a couple of goes on it, which gives Tom another excuse to show off his skateboarding skills. And then the friend goes on it and immediately falls, smashes his leg really horribly in an open fracture, which Gould then licks.
Yes. So you've seen all this stuff,
and then wind up in hospital, and you have the birth.
Yeah. But you've seen all this stuff, but then when he's beating the girlfriend's legs with the bamboo cane, there's no blood, because that would be gross.
I think in terms of the context, it's an awkward scene, because I think because the whole point is that I assume that she gets pleasure from it, from its kind of violence without any suffering, and I don't really know. I don't really know many people like that. I don't know about you.
Well, yes, but it's just saying, because suddenly it's like the movie's going, "Ooh, we don't want to go too far." It's like, but I thought that was the whole point of this film, was to go too far, and yet that bit is suddenly, it's a weird little bit of consequence-free violence, and I don't understand how it can suddenly get po-faced about that, and suddenly get po-faced about her explicitly being sexual with Tom Green, and yet there's all this other stuff going on. It's a bit where the film suddenly doesn't seem to be sure of what it's doing.
I think, well, there's that whole bit where he's very shy and insecure about sex, which, believe it or not, I feel is actually a character detail, because it's not a film that's very heavy on complex characterisation, but the idea that he is actually quite insecure. And maybe that's why he's always doing this crazy, outrageous nonsense.
But it's almost
a kind of overcompensation.
The only example that springs to mind is in Back to the Future, when Marty's in the car with his mum, and isn't his original plan that he's going to make a pass at her and she's going to be outraged? Or am I completely misremembering?
It's more that they're going to be fooling around in some way, and then George is going to open the door and say, "Hey, stop that."
That's it, of course, yeah. And actually what happens is that Marty's mum starts coming onto him, and suddenly and he
panics.
Yeah, so that kind of panicky reaction to sex, again, is something that's a reasonably well-established point in sort of teen films.
But in that's different, because in Back to the Future, that's his mum.
Well, yes, yeah, I mean, obviously that's, yeah.
And that seems the reason why Disney refused to make the movie.
Really?
Because they refused to make a film in which a mum comes onto her own son.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, this political correctness gone mad, isn't
it? I know. But they end up getting around it with such a brilliant line, where she kisses him, and he pulls away, and Marty's looking absolutely horrified, and she says, I don't know what's going on, but when I kiss you, it's like I'm kissing my brother. And immediately, bang, that's all resolved with one line of dialogue.
Yeah.
And that is why Back to the Future is one of the best written films I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I think it falls outside of the realms of this podcast, because the consensus on Back to the Future is that it's a perfect film.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who has tried writing screenplays myself, it's a tough day when you realise you'll never write anything as good as Back to the Future, because it's perfect.
But I mean, that's the example that springs to mind of somebody being embarrassed in the presence of somebody else that's being obviously sexual. I'm sure there were other examples. It's just I've kind of blanked on. And also, I haven't watched. So I've sort of disinterestedly watched The Breakfast Club when it was on TV once, and that's about. Haven't seen any other. Haven't seen 16 Candles or Pretty in Pink. I think Weird Science was an essential part of my teenage viewing growing up, but that was about it.
You were a boy of the 80s.
I know,
that's understandable. So you don't have much knowledge of John Hughes?
No, in fact, to the point where
you're a disgrace.
To the point where I was actually just trying to mention film titles in the hope that I didn't have to bring up the name of the guy that I couldn't quite remember.
You must have seen Planes, Trains and Automobiles.
I haven't even seen Baby's Day Out, so...
Oh yeah, about 1990, John Hughes stopped making films for teenagers and he started making films for his own children. And I don't think it's fair to say that the quality of them dropped, but they stopped being entertaining to anyone over the age of 10. So we have Beethoven, you have Baby's Day Out. He wrote a number of screenplays under a pseudonym, including Made in Manhattan.
Oh.
It was Made in Manhattan and Drillbit Taylor, which I think was produced after his death. But I think the turning point was Home Alone.
No, I haven't. I have seen Planes, Trains and Automobiles. I didn't get it. Sorry.
Get out.
This might be the point. Yes, yeah. I would just stay silent from now on. No, it's one of those films that, a bit like Goonies and things. There's these films that other people obviously have a real fondness for, but just pass me by.
That's fair enough. I was listening to a podcast discussion the other day about Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose.
Oh, yes.
The X-Files, which I had just watched, but I'm working my way through the whole series. And I thought, well, this is interesting, and it's quite entertaining, and it's got some great dialogue, and it's got a great supporting performance, but I don't find it particularly profound. And then I was listening to this podcast, and it was...
That's the X-Files files, is that the one?
That's the one, yes. And it was the host, Kumail Nanjiani, and his guest, talking about how life-changing and how profound I thought it was, and I thought, I really don't relate to anything you're saying. It's great that it was that important to you, and that it opened these doors of perception and ways of thinking, and it was clearly very life-changing, and that's great, but it left me completely dead cold.
Yeah.
But Freddy Got Fingered didn't leave you cold, did it?
No, it did. As I say, I went through the entire rainbow of emotions, I think, from...
fear, hatred, disgust, joy, denial, and anger.
Yeah, I mean... If the purpose of art is to provoke an emotional reaction, then it certainly provoked several from me. It genuinely succeeded on that level. I still, having said all this stuff and having thrown around Monty Python and Back to the Future and all that kind of stuff, I honestly still don't know whether I could say it's a good film or not. But it's definitely a film.
It's definitely a thing that occurred. I think that was in the text message that you sent me after you watched it. That was definitely a thing.
Yes.
That's definitely an object. I mean, there are lots of little throwaway bits in it that I like as just little bits of comic convention, like the sausage piano, because that comes out of the the conversation he has with his girlfriend Betty, where she says that to help his creative process, he should try listening to some music or try having something to eat, and he misunderstands this and thinks that he's supposed to do all those things at once. So he's playing the piano with strings tied to his hands that are connected to sausages hanging from the ceiling that are going up and down, while he's also trying to draw his animation sketches with the other hand. And his father comes home and he starts just randomly hammering out chords on the piano, going, "Daddy, would you like some sausage?" As they sort of sausages flying up and down in the ceiling.
I don't know. If you asked me what the correct number of sausages to hang on pieces of string from the ceiling was to be funny, I'd have to point to that scene because they got the number exactly right.
Well, I assume it's 10.
Fewer than that, and there wouldn't have been enough. And too many, and it would have just looked stupid.
It would have just been a wall of sausages.
Yeah, but for some reason, no. And it's the fact as well that obviously some are attached to one hand and some are attached to the other. So only some of them go up and some of them go down. And
they're all crossed over as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like the ones on the left and the ones on the right. So it makes it more...
And also...
such this weird image.
And also, they're not... praise for the props guy at this point, because they're not just tied on in the middle, because that would be boring. Some of them are tied on at one end, so you've got some sausages that are hanging from one end, some sausages that are hanging in a sort of U shape because they've been tied in the middle, and it's the mixture that makes it funny. It's exactly the right number of sausages there, and it manages to be really grotesque but really funny as he starts playing the keyboard and these damn sausages start jerking up and down.
And I think that's almost representative of the whole movie, because there's such care and effort gone into creating something which is completely idiotic.
Yeah.
And going back to comparing this with other sort of bad taste modern comedies, which are just thrown together in the laziest way possible.
Or just pointing at the thing and going, look, is it Me the Spartans or something, where they just go, look, this is a bit from another film.
Well, in fact, tying everything together, I was going to point to A Million Ways to Die in the West, which is Seth MacFarlane, talk about Family Guy earlier, and the one, I saw that in the cinema, it was one of the worst films I saw that year. I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea to go and see it. I think I was just...
You just hated it.
I just wanted to leave the house. But the one bit of that movie that actually got a positive reaction out of the audience I saw it with is a scene where his character sees lights on in a shed at the end of the town late one night. He goes there to see what's going on. He opens the door, and inside is Doc Brown working on the DeLorean. And the reaction from the audience was, specific. Oh yeah, I like Back to the Future. That was a thing that happened, and they're so pleased to see Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown, because who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
But yeah, the one bit of the movie they liked is the bit that was a different movie.
That reminds them of a better, funnier movie. And this is not a remotely original point, but that's Seth MacFarlane's career, isn't it? Is pointing at things, going,
look at that.
Do you remember? This is something. Do you remember? I mean, there's an inexplicable bit in an episode of Family Guy where they do the going to bed song from The Sound of Music, and the three kids line up and they sing this song and they go up the stairs to the bedroom, and it's a perfectly straight rendition of the song. And I watch it, and I'm not sure whether in the context of Family Guy it's done perfectly straight because that was one of the conditions that they had of having to use the song, or whether it's done perfectly straight because it's simply funny enough to go, look, it's The Sound of Music, but it's the characters from Family Guy doing The Sound of Music. Laugh, you scum.
Yeah, I mean, Seth MacFarlane really loves musicals. He's very well known for his love of musicals. He actually has his own prom this year at the BBC Proms, which is unbelievable.
Wow. Privatise the BBC now. Don't close it down. It's dead to me. Although possibly the new series of Doctor Who could change all that. We'll see. But you're on borrowed time as well. This isn't a Doctor Who.
Yeah, there's no Doctor Who prom this year. Instead, there's a Seth MacFarlane prom.
Yeah.
He has this odd habit of going off on weird musical tangents in his shows. Like there's that famous edition of, I know exactly what you're about to say.
Probably.
Where they play a full song performed by country star Conway Twitty, which is about 3.5 minutes in one episode of Family Guy. All the way through, this clip from
the Grand Ole Opry,
or one of those popular shows. purely to fill time. And that is the kind of laziness that means he has absolutely no justification for making jokes about other people's comedy.
Absolutely.
Because he is one of the laziest comedians working.
Funny enough, that wasn't the scene. There's another sequence where Gene Kelly dances with
Jerry Mouse
in
Anchors Away, yeah.
And there is a sequence in an episode of Family Guy, which is that sequence, but with Stewie pasted over the top of Joey, and
they play the whole thing
again. Yeah, and it's done perfectly straight. And I just don't know if it's meant to be funny because it's Family Guy.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's just the fact that it's Stewie, and if you were to just have like one little excerpt of that. There's a sudden burst for 5 minutes of Stewie dancing with Gene Kelly. That would be quite funny. It's like, what? Did I just see that? But they play the whole thing.
Yeah.
Where you say, well, yeah, Gene Kelly was a fantastic dancer. Great. I think I'll watch a Gene Kelly movie rather than this poorly written comedy show.
Yeah. You're listening to the We Hate Seth MacFarlane
podcast. The Seth MacFarlane Hatred Hour.
Yeah, take that, Seth MacFarlane. That'll teach you to be successful and make films and things like that.
Yeah, but none of his films have been any good.
Even
Hellboy 2 is quite ropey. And he's only a voice in that. And it's him doing the voice of... really going off on the sunshine.
It's fine.
Seth MacFarlane.
We hate Seth MacFarlane.
He has his character in that is a German ghost who walks around in what's basically like a deep-sea diver's suit.
Oh, yeah.
Because he has no physical form. And that's an idea from the Hellboy comic book, and that's actually a really nice idea. But his character is the same as Klaus the fish from American Dad, and he has exactly the same speaking voice.
Oh, right.
And I think, there are a lot of really good voice actors you could have hired who would have done something interesting. Is Billy West that busy?
Apparently, yes.
Well, good for him.
Yeah,
but if not, why didn't you hire him?
Yeah.
Anyway, talking about any other comedian, the restaurant sequence. Yeah, we've had that bit. Sausage piano, Green's cancer video. Oh, the little boy.
Oh yes, again, genuinely funny. But another example of the film suddenly going all weird and po-faced and we mustn't go too far at the end when he runs. So the running gag is that this kid just gets more and more horribly injured through the film. So he gets hit by a baseball.
He accidentally gets a baseball in the face from his father.
And he gets hit by something in the restaurant. What is that? Because he's in the restaurant, he gets injured. There's a point where he falls over and cracks himself on the side of the car.
And his face is covered in blood.
Yes.
I think that it reminds me of a maxim of Kenny Everett's, which is that a lot of blood and guts is funny.
Yeah.
But just a little bit is actually quite creepy and unpleasant.
Yeah.
So he falls over and hits his face against the side of a car, but he's covered in blood. Like he's just gone face first into a bowl of spaghetti.
And then I forget how else he... But anyway...
And at the end of the...
at the end of the film, when they're coming back from Pakistan... He runs forwards, and he's obviously meant to have got hit by the plane's propeller because there's an enormous gout of blood, and the crowd reacts horrified. But then you get the kid's voiceover saying something like, "Oh,
I'm okay."
Yeah, and it just seems odd that that's there, as if they're afraid of going too far and afraid of killing a kid. And it's just another one of these moments when the film suddenly pulls back, as if this film, which has done all these other things, suddenly don't want to upset people.
Well, that I thought it worked in the context because whatever he did, whatever happened to him in connection with that propeller, it's not survivable.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
And yet, it's I'm okay, I'm fine. Which is it's going back to the cartoonish thing again.
Yeah,
where it's almost like Wile E. Coyote running through a propeller, getting sliced up, and then just pushing all his slices back together again.
Yeah, I suppose that's I can sort of see that. At the time, it seemed to undercut what had been a joke that was building up, which was just that the kids seemed to get more and more horribly hurt each time.
But he always bounces back.
Yes,
and you see, like having been beaten up and having his face smashed in all the way through. Just in that beginning of that end scene, he's fine. I don't think he maybe has a black eye, but nothing else. So he'll maybe have a few cuts and bruises from where he ran through an aeroplane propeller. But he'll be all right.
Yeah. bit of disinfectant, it'll be okay.
Yeah. Another bit that I did enjoy, we're really just recounting bits that I like.
That's fine, because I keep finding that's the thing, that the bits that you liked are often the bits that I kind of reacted to quite strongly. But sorry, what was the bit you liked?
It's where he returns to the animation studio towards the end of the movie, having talked his way in through security before by saying, "Oh, I'm here. I've got the bag for the guy," and pointing at the ground, saying, "Oh, Japan forwards," and just talking gibberish to get through security. The second time he goes there, he runs screaming through the building, through the metal detector, which goes off, and he runs into Dave Davison's office, leaping onto a table, and Dave says slightly nervously, "Gord, is there a bomb in there?" And I thought, oh yeah, that reminds me, if this was made in 2001, because they couldn't have made it any later.
Yes. Yeah, I was wondering exactly when it was made in 2001.
Before September.
Yeah, because equally, the whole... I can't have a feeling if it had been made later, the ending would have been different as well. I don't know whether you would have had the whole sequence in Pakistan. I just feel that a sequence where at the end, the two lead characters are they kidnapped or are they just arrested? I forget now exactly.
I think the idea is that they're kidnapped.
Yeah. They're sort of... I feel that would have been a bit... Suddenly might have got a bit near the knuckle for people, after September.
Yeah, well, I suppose so, but it depends on what kind of political connections you're prepared to draw between Pakistan and the Taliban.
Yes,
because the idea is...
Sorry, I've just embroiled you in a diplomatic incident.
And now I can never go there. But I think the idea is that they're sort of bandits or some kind of criminal gang chancing their arm by kidnapping some Americans, which, not to impugn Pakistan too heavily, I can imagine will probably still happen there because it doesn't seem like the friendliest country in the world. Although I'm sure it's lovely.
Going back to what I was saying about, there's a point about halfway through the film where I hated Tom Green. That's the point when the film, I kind of began to get a handle on how the film worked, and it's like, okay, this is fine, this is meant to be nonsense. I'm not meant to be sitting here worrying, why are people not reacting like human beings to what's going on? And that was kind of the point where I felt like I got the film, the whole sequence as well, where Dave Davison sort of pulls out a checkbook and says, "Oh, I'll give you $1 million to make this cartoon," and I'm sitting there first going, that's not how money works. And then it's like, oh, actually, fine. And that was the point where if I had to say the film won me over, it was like, yeah, okay, fine, I understand. Now I understand how this works, and I just went with it for the rest of the film. And it helps that, right after that, you get the sequence with the helicopter, and then you get the helicopter lands, and he's having the romantic conversation with the girlfriend, and they do the whole thing about "I can't hear you," which again I think is just meant to be a parody of those sorts of scenes from rom-coms and things. And
I like that it's the one point in the movie where his character is being genuinely sincere and really speaking from the heart, but the gag is we can't hear a word he's saying, and he's bought her a bag of jewels.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yeah.
Because that's the level his cartoon brain is working at.
Yeah.
I think that's a really lovely sequence, because it's one thing that I do like about the film that does feel, it feels wrong to say that it's transgressive, but the reveal that Betty's in a wheelchair early on, it's played as a joke, but it's never said, "Oh, she's in a wheelchair." Ooh, Gord really doesn't have a problem with it.
Nobody really reacts to it.
The only person who does is Jim, who there's the great line where he's sort of saying, "Oh my God, she's a cripple." And he says, "Oh, do you have a problem with my legs?" He says, No, you're the one who has a problem with your legs. Which I thought was the only character in the film who could say that.
Yeah.
But the fact that she's in a wheelchair it's kind of like a non-issue.
Nobody really remarks on that. The reveal that she's sitting down and then she backs away from the desk and heads off, I think, and again, you'll have to bear with me because this is kind of half-remembered stuff, there was a terrible comedy series a few years ago, and one of the hilarious jokes that they did, and this was a hidden camera show, I think, one of the hilarious jokes that they did was that a sexy girl would walk up to a man in a bar and they'd have a conversation, and she would start coming on to him, and then she would, they would, they would start talking, and then she would head off to go to the toilet, and she would walk off in the most sort of hilarious cripple fashion possible. And that was the joke, was
that she has a gammy leg.
Yeah, that was the joke, was that she had a gammy. Yeah, the joke was basically, oh, look at this. He doesn't know that she's actually a cripple, and look at his surprised face.
Was this a Don Jolly show?
No, but it was that kind of thing. I really wish I could remember.
Was it British or American?
It was a British show, and I feel like I'm just on the edge of remembering what the hell it was called. But it was rubbish.
It sounds horrible. I mean, that's the most.
Yeah,
it's lazy and deeply unpleasant.
Yeah.
And that's where Freddy Got Fingered takes the moral high ground. Yeah, she's in a wheelchair.
Well,
what's your problem with that?
What caught me initially was that when I saw that sequence in Freddy Got Fingered, I was reacting to the memory of this lousy TV show.
Oh, right.
But actually, yeah, you're quite right. I don't think anybody, apart from the dad, nobody reacts badly to that. I don't think it's just one of those things, isn't it?
Yeah.
And actually, then, of course, again, in a parody of the character learning to follow his dream, she gets her jet-propelled wheelchair.
Yeah. I love that she's a nurse and her hobby is making rockets and that kind of thing. And she wants to make a jet-propelled wheelchair, which looks like the most useless object in the world. And she says, she manages to build it. Well, now what?
Yes.
Well done.
Yeah.
But it's a completely useless item. But again, it feeds into the whole thing. She's achieved her dream, and that inspires him to quit his cheese shop.
Yeah, he's working in it. And again,
Monty Python connection, a cheese shop.
Yes, yeah. And again, another good joke where the manager of the cheese shop looks like he's about 14 or something.
I've been through that. I actually had a job. It was a summer away from school, and my boss was 16. He was younger than me, and that was... and he even told me off once because I was skiving.
Oops.
But yes, that's something that I think it's almost universal, that at some point you're going to have a boss who's younger than you.
Yeah.
But acts as though they know better. And actually, in my case, he actually did know better because he worked there for quite a few years. One thing I really liked is the whole idea of the cheese sandwich. This recurring concept of the cheese sandwich, which comes out of something from Tom Green's own show, where he would, I think it was just along the lines of him striking up a conversation with someone in a park about their lunch and asking if he could have it. And they were eating cheese sandwiches. And he was completely baffled by the idea of just having a cheese sandwich, just cheese on its own. Why you would have that. And I kind of see what it means, because particularly in the film where it's American-style cheese, where it's processed and thinly sliced, why would you have a sandwich with just a slice of... What's it called? Not Dairy Lee. Why would you have that? It's like the most nothing food. It's not even any nutrition in it.
And it's just kind of a stand-in for the most boring, bland thing.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
And so that's his job, is making these cheese sandwiches, which is completely just empty, meaningless nothing. And he winds up working in a Subway type sandwich shop where they just serve these cheese sandwiches. Why do they? How are they even in business? But there's another nice visual gag where he's mopping up at the end of the day, and then he lifts them up and starts mopping the tabletops, and just smashing everything onto the floor, and not really, because he's just beyond caring about his situation by this point. And there's actually, before that, there's the heartbreaking moment where he's looking at all his animation designs and all his sketches in the rain, and he just closes his folder and dumps it in the bin. And I thought, oh no, don't do that.
Well, that's the kind, again...
It's the screenwriting structure, because that's the low point. Yeah. But I thought, that's actually a real low point, because he's giving up on his whole dream to work in a cheese shop, which is the worst thing he can imagine. And he's ruined everything. Yeah. Including driven his mother away because he's claimed that his dad's a child molester.
Well, that's it. I mean, and that's... Yeah.
I mean, at that moment is, I think, difficult to defend, because he just comes out with that out of nowhere. and it spontaneously ruins his father's life.
You've obviously got the whole thing that you sit there and go, well, in the real world this would be horrible, but in exactly the same way that in the hospital when he starts trying to help the woman give birth to the baby, you're sitting there going, well, that's sexual assault, mister. But it's not the real world, it's the crazy world of Tom Green.
Gord eventually snaps and says, oh, fuck you, Dad. His dad has been drinking very heavily. Oh, fuck me, you want to fuck me, don't you? And then he drops his trousers and starts waving his arse at him.
And the mum comes down and misinterprets what she sees and then goes off. And it's that thing that... This is kind of one of these moments when I wish that I had better knowledge of teen films beyond having watched Weird Science in 1989 on BBC Two. It's that thing of... I'm sure that is a very, very typical part of the structure of these kind of films, that there's a point when the inability of the lead character to make a success of his life causes problems for the family. I'm sure if I'd seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I'd be all over this and I'd be going, oh, this bit's like this and this bit's like this.
That's the thing. There is that moment in Ferris Bueller towards the end where you haven't seen Ferris Bueller, have you?
No.
God, why are you even on this show?
I haven't even seen Parker Lewis Can't Lose. I'm rubbish.
Oh, neither have I.
Oh.
I mean, did you know that there was a Parker Lewis Can't Lose was launched the same time as a Ferris Bueller TV spin-off?
No,
and they're pretty much the same show, except Ferris Bueller's sister was played by Jennifer Aniston.
Okay.
Who is now Louis Theroux's cousin-in-law.
Oh, good for her.
Towards the end of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Another film I haven't seen.
Yes, but the point is, his best friend Cameron, who's the one who has this awful life with this horrible domineering father, and they've taken the car out for the day, and they take the car back, and they have the idea of putting a brick on the accelerator and running it in reverse to take all the miles off. And obviously this doesn't work. And Cameron says, you know what, enough of this, I'm going to stand up to my dad. I've had it with this. I've had it with him bullying me and treating me like this. I'm going to stand up for myself. And the weird thing is, we see him resolve to take this decision. We never see his father. His father doesn't appear in the film ever. We don't meet any of his family. We only see Cameron on his own. So a lot of people have speculated that Cameron is a figment of Ferris's imagination, or vice versa. That it's some kind of cuddly version of Fight Club. I think there should be... I want to see a modern day version, not a remake, a sequel, with the roles reversed, where Cameron's the one who's got his life together, but Ferris is sort of living in this horrible pent-up world, and they're now both sort of in their late 40s, and Cameron teaches Ferris to live again. I think that would be great, because it would be sort of, recapturing your youth whilst remaining an adult. I think there's a market there, but it would also mean horribly sullying one of the most popular films of the 80s.
Well, that's fine. We'll make that, and then we'll make Goonies 2 or something as well.
There will never be a Goonies 2.
See if we can sully that one as well.
I'm not that big a fan of the Goonies. I think it plays into because I know it has a lot of fans in America, and I think it plays into a particular mindset and a particular nostalgia about childhood that I don't have, and I'm not sure is particularly a British trope.
I can't. It's certainly not a film I can really relate to, and
it's a fun movie.
I'm listening to Harmontown, and I think it's a film that comes up quite often mentioned in Harmontown, and Dan Harmon, I hope I'm not putting words into his mouth, will say that I don't think he's the world's biggest Goonies fan, and the studio and the audience to the podcast will always react. So it's obviously a very, very fondly received film in America, but
particularly I think with the generation that Harmon has attracted as his fans. I think that's the exact right generation, and it's a good film. It's very enjoyable. It just hasn't struck that particular chord.
No. But you could say the same thing about there's quite a few films like that, but they're sort of touchstones. It's a film I should have mentioned earlier when we were talking about teen films again, is Karate Kid. Because again, that's one of these films that's got that very traditional teen movie structure. But as well, about 1987, I remember reading something which talked about Karate Kid already having passed into American folk mythology, and I just thought, it's not that good.
Well, maybe sort of popular cultural mythology, I think you could say, even though it's a remake of Rocky with the same director. And again, it's not a bad film. It's a very enjoyable film. And bits of it really have become cultural touchdowns. Like
Yeah.
Mr. Miyagi is such
yeah.
a great, indelible character and has become like the archetype of the wise
yeah.
teacher.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes, he's kind of taken over from Yoda in a way. But
yeah.
but it is that thing.
That's a very racist thing to say.
Oh dear. But it's a very traditionally structured film. I'm sure if you went through it by... What's that system they call? Is it called Save the Cat or something? Where
Yes.
you go, they say, at this point this must happen, and here's the high point, and here's the low point, and here's how we realised...
the hero's journey.
Yeah,
The
that
Joseph
kind of
Campbell
Joseph
stuff.
Campbell stuff, yeah.
I'm very... There's that something about Freddy Got Fingered that I like, is that it just tramples all over the idea of formula.
Well, it takes the hero's journey, because you still have the dream, and you probably have the meeting with the goddess and all the other things that Dan Harmon goes on about endlessly. But it just, again, it puts nonsense into them, so that the low point is he's working in a cheese sandwich shop. The high point is seeing his wheelchair-using girlfriend realise her successful dream of inventing rocket motors.
But
It's nonsense. For
It's
want of a better word.
subverting the structure by using it as a machine to feed the audience gibberish.
Yeah, and that's the same kind of thing that I suppose Monty Python and the Holy Grail does. Actually, that's a really bad example, because Monty Python and the Holy Grail is just a series of sketches strung together. But again, it's the same kind of thing that the TV series did a lot better, where Graham Chapman looks out of a window and goes, "Good God, this building is surrounded by film." And that's where it uses the structure of something else, and it parodies it, or it uses the production methods and it parodies that kind of thing. And that's what Freddy Got Fingered is doing. It's parodying the hero's journey. Sorry, I got kind of lost in my own metaphor there.
No, that's okay. Well, I think to sum up, I really like Freddy Got Fingered. I think it's a very creative movie, and I would compare it to South Park in its using sort of formula combined with obscenity to actually make a point. And in this case, it's trying to sort of strike a blow for creative freedom by just taking this $11 million and creating nonsense,
and just and try and blow it in as stupid a way as possible. The scene with the helicopter again. I can imagine that they got the money and just went, right, what's the most expensive thing we can do with this?
Yeah.
So they hired a helicopter and flew it around for a bit. I watched it on a Saturday afternoon, and then in the evening I watched the Grand Budapest Hotel, and it made watching what's obviously a much, much better film a very strange experience, because suddenly you're much more aware of the artifice. I'm struggling to, but it kind of left me much more aware with where I would have watched a film like the Grand Budapest Hotel and just gone, oh yeah, that's very good. It looks lovely and it's very clever. Suddenly, much more aware of the processes of filmmaking, and I don't know if that's just because earlier in the day I'd watched a film which took the processes of filmmaking and just made them utterly stupid.
So you say that you enjoy other films more having watched this?
Possibly, yeah. That may not be a good thing.
Well, I suppose it could be, because if it helps you appreciate movies, not necessarily this movie, but movies in general, then it can only have been a success.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I would say it's a secret success of its own. Bad taste does not equal a bad movie, and as he says at the beginning of the film and at the end, he should be very proud. Thanks very much to Chris Arnsby for making the time in his lovely home to accommodate this podcast. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to tweet us at cinema_limbo. Or if you have any personal messages for me or recommendations, feel free to contact me at j_j_Phillips. And until next time, remember, I'm a sexy boy. Goodbye. You have been listening to Cinema Limbo, hosted and produced by Jeremy Phillips, edited by Martin Fenton, with music by Philip Alderman. Cinema Limbo is part of the Podnose Podcast Network. Come and visit us at www.podnose.com.